Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. Well, I want to welcome you to the second in the series of videos on UK modeling. And what we're going to be looking at today is the Southern Railway's Merchant Navy Class 462 Express passenger locomotives. Now, because of wartime restrictions, they did classify these as both passenger and freight, and I've read that on occasion they did actually use these in freight operations, but not on a regular basis. They were express passenger locomotives. And the model itself is just a beautifully running locomotive. It is by all means the best running steam locomotive that I own from Hornby or from any of the other UK builders. So it really is a nice one, and I highly recommend it. And I know Hornby, I believe, has the same model that I'm going to be showing you here in their range for 2023. And that, of course, is the Southern Railway's Channel Packet locomotive. So what we're going to be doing on that is replacing a lot of the plastic nameplates and number plates and things of that nature, and using etched brass ones from Fox models or Fox transfers. So let's go ahead. I've got those laid out here before me here on the workbench. We'll take a look at them, and then we'll start removing the old appliques that Hornby put on, and I'll show you how you can apply these etched brass versions to your models. Before we do get started, I want to repeat what I said on my video on Friday, that I got an email from Hatton's. They have received another shipment of the Genesis coaches in the Great Western Railway color scheme that I showed you in the video last week. So those are available. They have a limited range of them at this time. And in all cases, I think, except maybe one, they had at least 10 on hand. And so it's your opportunity. If you missed out on pre-ordering any of these, it's your opportunity to go ahead as soon as you finish watching this video, get on the Hatton's website and get an order in for those. They also have a number of other departmental coaches that they have produced that came in the same shipment apparently. So go to hattons.co.uk and you can pick up your own Great Western Railway Genesis coaches. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look down here on the workbench, and we'll take a look at the etched brass parts from Fox that I'm going to be applying to my Merchant Navy locomotive. First, a little history on the Merchant Navy class. The Merchant Navy class locomotives were designed by Oliver Bullard, who was the chief engineer for the Southern Railway at the time, and these were produced from 1941 until 1949, and there were a total of 30 of these produced. And as I said earlier, they were originally designated as a dual service passenger freight class of locomotives so that they could be built during the war, Second World War. Now the names for these, this is the Channel Packet, this one here is the East Asiatic lines, and they were named after shipping lines that had a prominent role in the Battle of the North Atlantic. And then later on, the ones that were built, I believe, after World War II, were named for lines that used the Southern Railway docks at Southampton. So these were basically designed for express passenger service. They were widely used on what were called the boat trains that ran between the Southampton docks and London. And they were basically then a very fast, heavy Pacific locomotive. Now, these were originally built with this beautiful, what looks like a streamlined casing on them. It was actually called air styling, and it was done that way for one reason, so that it matched the curvature of the coaches that were in use on the train, and that meant that these locomotives could go through the cleaning stations along with the passenger coaches, and it would have given them, made it much easier to keep them clean. They had a lot of other innovations that I really don't want to get into. Just look it up on Google it and look it up on Wikipedia or wherever. And there's a lot of good information about these, how they operated, what the various design differences amongst these were. And there were a number of problems with this casing because they had real difficulties. The exhaust smoke from the smokestack tended to flow along the lines of the locomotive. It really did obscure visibility quite a lot, and later on, as you can see here on the East Asiatic, they added smoke deflectors here to try to get that smoke up, and made a number of other changes to try to improve visibility. Eventually, they finally rebuilt these and took the air styling casing off, so they looked like a much more conventional locomotive. And there are still a number of these in the rebuilt version out there on the heritage railways in use. And I believe there is one that they're actually in the process of converting back to the original version, to the original air styling casing and everything else. As I said earlier, we're going to be replacing these plastic numbers and nameplates and the like with etched brass versions. Okay, so here we have the channel packet as it looked originally when released in 1941. Now you can see we have a red nameplate here for the Southern on the side of the tender. We have the number plate here on the side of the cab. We have the nameplate for the channel packets. It says Merchant Navy class right here. And then in the center is the flag for the channel packet line. And that's one thing, all of these carried the flag of the shipping line that they were named for. So that's part of this design. So let me show you the difference that you will see once we apply this. First, let's look at the Southern lettering, or the Southern nameplate here for the tender, and look at the stark difference in that, how much clearer it is on the etched brass version with the bright brass. And by the way, they apply a varnish of some sort over the finished version of these etchings to prevent tarnishing of the brass itself. So they should stay nice and shiny for quite a long time. So we're going to pull this flat plastic nameplate off the tender and replace it with this one here. Another thing, let me pull this up so that you can see it now. And right here you can see the difference between the original nameplate for the channel packet as opposed to this etched brass one. So we'll pop that off and replace it. We also have the number plate to go on the side of the cab here. Much more distinct red. A very bright red as opposed to this somewhat blood red looking version. So I like these a lot better. This is much more orange. This is a nice bright red. Finally, we have this single number plate to go here on the front, as you can see here. And originally, Southern used this inverted horseshoe Southern nameplate to go, or logo, to go on the front of the smoke box door. So we'll be replacing that as well. Now, one thing I do want to warn you about with these locomotives, and that is the brake rigging here. Okay, this is one long casting, and it's attached to the rest of the brake rigging here on the side with little nipples that fit into these projections. And it's almost impossible to avoid breaking these off, let me tell you. I've done it on all of these, and I had to end up replacing them. And what we have generally found works best is to just take a very small pin vise drill bit and drill out a hole in this piece here that the brake rigging attaches to, insert a piece of brass wire with some super glue into that, let it set up, and then drill holes right here, here, and here in the brake rigging, and glue it onto those little pieces of brass wire that you've done. And since I did that, I haven't broken it loose again. It's very durable now. So I don't know, hopefully Hornby will catch on and do something about this attachment, because it is very, very easy to break these off. Okay, so I want to start here with the tender, and what we're going to do is just take, this is an X-Acto knife blade. It's a number 17 blade, and I'm just going to slide it underneath the edge of the plastic plate and pop that up. It just comes up quite easily because there's only a couple of small little plastic pieces that hold it onto the tender. There's holes drilled here, and then these fit in them. So that's how that fits in there, and it's glued in place very lightly. So as you can see, it popped right off with this number 17 blade. And let's go ahead and do the other one on the other side while we're at it. Okay, and I've got the touch for it. So I'm just going to put this 17 blade under here, and we'll pop it up. Like that. And then pop the middle one. And then finally we'll pop the one on my left. There we go. And so that's all there is to removing it. We'll be able to apply glue to the back of the etched brass, slide it right on in place, and let that set up. Now, what am I going to use as far as glue? Well, a lot of people probably use super glue. And if I were going to use something, I would probably use this Loctite super glue gel. And I've used that on a lot of my modeling lately. It works very well. It sets up a little bit slower than your typical super glue, so you've got a little bit more time to work with it. Now, the problem with super glue is that it might get brittle over time, and these logos, nameplates, and the like might have a tendency to pop off and get lost. So what I've been doing on the East Asiatic, I believe I used the Plyo-Bond, which, as they say here, is a general purpose adhesive, very similar, the Weldwood contact cement, both very, very similar products. You don't want to be using these in an enclosed area very long because the fumes are somewhat noxious, but they work very well. So let's take a look. Either one would be fine. I'm going to use the Plyo-Bond because I like it. Once the glue sets up, these details are going to stay on the side of the locomotive. They're not going to have a tendency to flake off or fall off or anything else. Before we go on, I want to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It's simple, easy, and free. All you have to do is hit that little red subscribe button, and when the little bell comes up, click on it and click all. One thing they tell you on the Plyo-Bond package and the instructions is you have to shake this up a lot because I think this is like a rubber cement in here. It's an adhesive. At any rate, it's got a lot of material dispersed in it, and it tends to settle to the bottom. So you do have to shake it in order to get that dispersed within the carrier. Okay, and then I'm just going to squeeze out a little bit on some scrap of paper here. Okay, and then once you get it open, because it does tend to dry quite hard in there, I'm just going to pour some out here, and you can see it's streaming out, and we'll cap it before I get it all over the place here. And then I've got a little stir stick to stir it up and get it ready to use. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm going to apply a little bit to the back of this southern nameplate here and get it all cleaned off the edges because I don't want it on the side of the locomotive. But we just want it to go in here and let it vaporize a lot of that carrier. And they tell you to let it dry several minutes. Okay, that's drying. Going to set it down here to dry. And one thing they do say on the package that this is not compatible with some plastics. I have tested it on these locomotives before, and I know it's not going to cause any problems. So I'm just going to place a dab or two here over the area where the original nameplate was located, and let that set up a minute too. Because what happens is, once this has vaporized a little bit and it's ready to be used, as soon as you touch the two pieces together, you'll get a good bond. So now I'm going to take it, make sure there's nothing left on the edges anywhere that's going to get on the model. And we're going to center it right over where it should be, right here. And the good thing about this is it gives you a little bit of time in case you need to adjust the fit. Now I need to turn this around so I can see it my way and make sure that it is properly seated. Okay, that looks good. So, there we have the Southern nameplate on the tender. I'm going to let this cure overnight here, which I think they tell you to do on the instructions. And then after that, it'll be ready for the other side. So I'll let you take a good close look at this now that we've replaced it. You can see how nicely those letters stand out now, and that gold lettering, you know, it looks like the brass casting that was used on the original locomotive. Okay, I'm going to put this aside and let it set up, and then I'll be able to do the other side in 24 hours. Okay, now we need to do the same thing to the locomotive. So I'm going to start back here on the cab with this number here, and we're going to put the number 17 blade underneath and just lift slightly. And it comes off that easily. So if you look real close, you can see the little pins attached here are cast to the back, and they just put a little spot of glue right in the middle there to hold it. Okay, so let me get one of these and we'll get it ready. Apply just a dab here to the back because you don't want any oozing out there and getting all over the model. But I want more than what Hornby used because that thing came off very, very easily. And the next thing I'm going to do is we want to put a little bit right here on the side of the cab where that came off. And it's better to always just put just a dab and add more later. It's easier to add more than to try to take any away, let me tell you. I'm going to keep it between the two pin mounting holes there. And that's it. Okay, so I'm ready to apply it. Let's go ahead, drop it into place. And we've got that one done. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward and we'll work on the nameplate. Let me point out one thing. I can see a little bit of glue about the size of the point of a needle right here and maybe one here. Leave them alone, let them dry, because once they're dry, it's much easier to pick that off than if you try to remove it now. Let it dry, come back later with a pin and just ease it off and it will come off. Okay, so one more time, we're just going to ease the blade underneath the edge here and pop it up. And you'll note that the side of the locomotive boiler here is sort of curved, so it's a lot easier to get your knife blade up underneath of this nameplate. And move it up, just pop it up a little bit. Go very slowly, you don't want to do anything too quickly. Like that. We'll come back and get that other piece in a minute. There. Got that one off. Let me see if I can pop this off now. Be very careful at this point because I don't want... What I want to do is put a little piece of scrap plastic here to act as a wedge. There we go. So I popped that one right off of there without any problem now. Okay, let's go ahead and apply a little bit of the contact cement here to the back of the nameplate. Put a little bit on each of these two outriggers here. And make sure we've got enough here in the center because that's mainly where it's going to contact. And we'll do the same thing here on the side of the locomotive. Put a little bit here in the center. Like so. And then a little touch right here where these side pieces are. You have to be very careful here because it's not very thick. This is just a little piece of plastic, and you could use a toothpick, would work very well. Anything with a nice little point on it should work. Okay, so we're going to go right down here. All you have to do is match the ends here with these two little dots where the pins were located before we took them off. Okay. And as I said, if there's any that kind of oozes out from underneath, leave it and get it up later with the point of a sewing needle or a pin of some kind. Okay, that's on there nice now. Tilt that up a little bit so you can see it better. Like that. Okay, let's work around on the front next. Okay, the next thing I want to do is this large number plate right here on the front. There we go. So now we'll be able to apply this number plate here in its place. I've applied glue to the back of the number board, and I'm just going to put a little bit of the adhesive right here. Okay, this is hard to do upside down, so bear with me. That looks pretty good right there. I'm going to turn it around so that I can actually see what it looks like. Okay, that one was actually pretty easy to line up because we have some square edges here that we can work with. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and prepare the inverted horseshoe that goes here around the center of the smoke box here. Be right back. Let's prepare the back of the horseshoe here. Put a little bit here. Okay, I've got the adhesive applied to the back here, the contact cement on the back, and I also put a little tab or two here on the smoke box door. And let me just slide this into place here. I hope you can see this. And I need to turn it this way so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so that's what it looks like after it's been applied. So I need to set this down, not touch it, and leave it alone for 24 hours, and then I can do the other side. So that's all there is to it. It's fairly straightforward, as I think I've shown you here in this demo. I'm not going to be able to show you the finished model until both sides are firmly dried, but at the beginning of next week's show, we will see it. We'll give it a test run, and you can see the finished model with all of the new appliques firmly glued in place. So come on back next week to see the final version of this running on the layout, and we'll be able to move on to another topic as well. Well, that's a wrap for today's video. I hope you will take the time to go to the Fox Transfers website, and I will put a link to that in the description to this video, and take a look at all of the various etched brass details that they have, because they have a wide range, not only for the Merchant Navy class and the West Country Battle of Britain class, but for many other locomotives from the UK as well. So keep looking and have a great week. We'll see you here on Friday also with another video from the DCC Guide. Bye now.